Hello, everybody, and welcome to another webinar from Payara. We will, as usual, give it a minute or two to let people join, because I can see some more people joining, so let's give it some time. And in a minute or two, we'll take you through the findings of our recent survey and the report. Okay. So also a bit of housekeeping, especially for those of you who haven't been to our webinars before. We are recording this webinar, so if you need to leave early or if you want to share it with anyone, you can use the same link as you used to join it today, and it's going to be available as recording right after we finish. Okay. And do feel free to use the chat that you should be seeing on your right-hand side. There's a chat option and a Q&A option, whichever you choose. You can use it to ask questions at any time during the webinar. If you have any questions, we will, hopefully, if time allows, we'll get to them at the end. And even if we don't have time, we will definitely get back to you with the answers beyond the webinar. So please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A option. Okay, so I think we're 2 minutes past, so I think we're good to start. Over to you, Chiara.
Awesome. Right, so can you move on to the next slide, please? Last year we ran a survey where Java developers, software architects, engineers contributed to share their insights about what they're working on, their ecosystems, to understand more about what's going on in the Java world. And here today we are presenting to you some of the key findings from the survey that we want to highlight, and also provide some insights to help you address the challenges that you might be facing. So if we have a look at the kind of history of Java. So if you move over to the next slide, please. Yeah. Basically, we celebrated last year the 30 years of Java. And in these 30 years, a lot has changed. Java has evolved considerably, starting from just a simple language into something that is more of a comprehensive platform. And not only Java itself has changed, but also, of course, all the technology that developers and software architects and engineers have been using have been kind of developing, changing, expanding. So, for example, we saw, of course, the arrival of cloud infrastructures. We saw Kubernetes, now recently AI. And then, of course, also around all the technologies supporting Java developers have also changed. So that, of course, from Java and your simple application, you started to see the development, of course, of middleware to support your software, the creation of different sort of architectures, different strategies to develop code and to kind of continue to maintain your code and change it and improve it towards more agile setup. So a lot has changed in these 30 years. But what we can see is, despite this kind of maturity, Java is still very popular. So if we move to the next slide, Java is still considered one of the top programming languages by most kind of industry leaders. And not only that, a lot of people still use Java. So it's not only just a thought leadership. Java is still there. Java is not dead. But yes, in practice, Java is still there. And that is exactly what we've been seeing with our survey. So, of course, the first question we asked was exactly, what is your primary framework? So, and of course, most of the people using Payara, of course, they rely on Jakarta EE. That's obvious. Most of the technologies we've been developing for years support Jakarta EE. But what you also see is that there's still a lot of people still using Java EE. There's a growing number of people supporting Spring, Quarkus, Microprofile, and other frameworks. So it's this maturity of Java is creating a more varied also ecosystem as a different alternatives kind of continue to develop. And from here, I think, Dominika, you wanted to also share a bit more of your insights about the Java community since you've been working in the sector for quite a few years.
Yeah, so thanks, Chiara. So from my perspective, I wanted maybe to put this a little bit in the context specifically of Jakarta EE itself, because obviously we have Jakarta EE at the top, and as Chiara mentioned, we also have to be aware that a lot of our respondents would already work with Java EE or Jakarta EE because a lot of them are actually Payara users, but still. I think it's important to put this in the time context, especially looking at back 2025 when we did this survey. Last year, the Jakarta community, we delivered a huge milestone. We released Jakarta 11, and that really specifically, it focused on making enterprise Java more practical. We aligned the platform with modern Java LTS releases. We improved cloud native features and introduced Jakarta data. So that means basically we trying to simplify this common data access patterns, and Jakarta EE 11 continues to focus on this shift towards cleaner APIs, better developer productivity, and where it leads, basically, it gives this basis for potential modernization, which is definitely something to be expected to be happening in the next few years, and obviously we'll be looking at it in the next couple of slides. So the report does show that most teams are actively modernizing, and we will show you some specific examples of this. And I think Jakarta EE 11 really landed exactly at the right time when companies are looking to evolve existing Java EE environments, and rather than changing the whole environment. So it's about modernizing and improving and changing. So Jakarta EE 11 is really where it should be at the right time, hopefully. Looking ahead to 2026, briefly, work is already underway for Jakarta EE 12. I won't be going into details about this but because that's a separate subject on its own. But the progress updates are being published regularly. There's been one published recently, and I will share the link in the chat. But basically, the plan is to build on Jakarta 11, update specs, and continue improving support for those modern deployment models, including containers and cloud platforms. So basically, modernization. So when we look at these timelines together, it suggests that Jakarta EE is evolving together with enterprises, with businesses, as they are modernizing their Java environments. So it's a steady progress with this strong focus on protecting your existing environment rather than trying to rebuild everything from scratch. Also, another thing I wanted to mention is Spring. Obviously, it's close behind. Again, understanding that our respondents are predominantly Payara users. But Spring is close behind, and we know that it's at 46% here, specifically in our report. What is very important to mention is that Spring actually is embracing Jakarta EE as well. Spring continued moving fully onto Jakarta EE APIs and namespaces last year, and we also announced it on our blog in November about how Spring Framework 7 specifically and Spring Data 2025.1 embraced Jakarta EE 11 compatibility, which is huge. It's really important. It basically means that Spring applications today are actually running on Jakarta EE standards underneath, even though it may not seem like it for many developers, because you're not working with Jakarta EE specifically, you're working with Spring, but actually Jakarta EE is there, and it's really important to understand that. This makes it easier, at the end of the day, it makes it easier for teams to modernize and reduce this friction between potential friction between frameworks. Another last but not least to mention is Quarkus. Here, maybe smaller amount, 4%, but it's still very relevant. Again, Quarkus is built very closely around Jakarta EE, around microprofile, and it's often used for those new modernization style cloud native services, performance-focused workloads. So it tends to appear alongside existing Jakarta or Spring systems rather than just on its own or replacing them. So what's really important here is that all of those technologies, for all of those technologies, Jakarta provides the common foundation. For Spring, for Quarkus, for example, they're built on top of it in different ways, and that gives the teams more choice while keeping this compatibility as the main focus. Again, very important for modernizing and keeping things stable and safe.
Exactly, yes. And so in a way, yes, we can see that there is variety, but at least in terms of frameworks, there is also some convergence. Now, looking at the most common trends that we see from all these people working on different frameworks is that there are some common projects that everyone is kind of working on. One of them is modernization. So, of course, with Java being over 30 years, it's normal that for a lot of companies, there would be some older applications together with some newer applications. And of course, they need to coexist, but also for the older applications, of course, the support windows for many of the supporting technologies are closing. So it's necessary to modernize. And of course, the modernization also offers an opportunity to give new capabilities, new functionalities, and maybe even better performance to your existing applications. So what we found in our survey is, of course, a lot of teams are working on modernization projects or are considering anyway modernization projects. Very, very few said that they are not interested in any modernization. And that might be also because they are either planning to retire their old applications or because maybe they are newer companies, startups, so that they don't yet have these older applications. But if we look at the timescales, it can vary quite a lot. So a lot of modernization projects are currently ongoing. Some are already planned for the future. So overall, we see people and teams are aware that modernization needs to happen. It's just also a matter of finding out how to plan it properly. You don't want to rush modernizations, and how to make sure that you find a suitable solution for your existing applications. Now, if we move on, another common trend that is partially related to modernization is the use of cloud that has become more and more relevant over the years. So what we saw is, yes, there are a growing number of people interested in deploying applications to the cloud and also already deploying applications to the cloud. Now, what we saw last year is also interesting because while, yes, there was a big drive to the cloud, we also saw some people move back to on-premise for a number of different reasons. So cloud is not always the option, especially when you think about modernization, but is often very, very helpful. And in fact, what we saw is also how important is cloud adoption in modernization projects. And for most teams, it's very important, or anyway important. For very, very few teams, it's not important at all, or kind of neutral. And that, of course, shed a light of where the technologies are kind of evolving. So if we move on then on Java and the cloud, how are the cloud and modernization projects connected? How are companies deciding to modernize and adopt the cloud? And we saw a lot of variety. So, for example, when looking at modernization options, there are a variety of different alternatives. It's generally called the 7 R's of modernization. And in our survey, we definitely saw that all these 7 R's are being considered, they are being adopted. And this is because, of course, different legacy applications will have different importance within an organization, and the way to modernize them might shift. And then, of course, based on the modernization strategy and how the cloud can support these modernization strategies, we also see that there are a lot of different cloud providers that are being used. So it's a very varied ecosystem. Of course, we saw the most common, like the AWS and Azure and Google Cloud, but a lot of teams are also using smaller providers. They are using a combination of these different clouds, or hybrid or fully on-premise options. So it's a very varied ecosystem, as we saw before. Now, another thing contributing to a very varied Java ecosystem is how apps are being managed. So if we move to the next slide, what you can see is, of course, when Java started, it was a more linear software development cycle. And now, of course, continuous improvement, continuous development, DevOps in general are creating more agile ways to improve and continue to work on your applications and keep them up to date. However, while DevOps as a practice is becoming mainstream, what you see also in the survey is that it's not completely fully adopted, and maybe also because there are so many older applications. In such cases, manual processes that are not really automated are still kind of predominant. But yeah, growing variety. So if we have a look then, of course, what are the top challenges that developers, engineers, and architects are facing? So many challenges, of course. With such a broad ecosystem, it's difficult to almost pinpoint to one single source. Of course, we saw in our survey that one big challenge is the standardizing the environments across team, exactly because there are different frameworks, different tools, different technologies, different needs that are being addressed. But then we saw a variety of other challenges that are equally important. Of course, legacy applications and managing them, security and compliance, maintaining those legacy application, monitoring application, having full observability into what's going on, but also then onboarding developers efficiently. And if you think about, for example, if you have legacy applications, when you onboard new developers to the team, they might not be aware of why a specific code was put in there or explain why a particular section is important. So of course, this will continue to grow as team continue to kind of evolve. And then of course, deployment strategies, they can still cause a lot of headaches for many developers. Keeping up with Kubernetes and their complexity, also kind of a big challenge that many encounter. So if we look at the overall ecosystem, we see it's very challenging and it's very complex. There's not one single typical Java ecosystem. You can see the variety in the frameworks, as we said before, in the cloud solutions, in the modernization strategies, into how applications are being handled. And I think, Dominika, you wanted to expand on that?
Yes, so I've just switched to the next slide. And again, I am sort of, if you haven't noticed already, I am taking this Jakarta context here. It's, to me, on this specific finding, it's interesting to see Jakarta on top. Again, let's consider who we've asked, who was part of our survey and report. It's predominantly Payara users, but what I wanted to focus on is this connection, or this disconnection potentially between Jakarta and Java EE. It's still Java EE still accounts for around a third of primary framework usage, with obviously Spring in the middle there. What I wanted to highlight is that it doesn't necessarily mean that teams are ignoring Jakarta EE. What it really shows is how long it takes for enterprise migrations to happen. And, I very often say that businesses that are, and especially vendors, like to move very fast, and technology moves very fast when we are observing the trends and the market, but it doesn't necessarily match how actual businesses and especially large enterprises are moving. Things there happen much slower, and this might be the reason why Java EE is still very much there, very predominantly, and why Jakarta is not there at it is at the top, but why not more Java EE users move to Jakarta EE? So this is a normal process. We don't see it as something to worry about. Moving from Java EE to Jakarta EE namespace is in lots of cases a big project, very big project. Namespace change means working with a lot of code, updating lots of libraries, retesting things, integrations, often retraining and learning, retraining your teams, learning about Jakarta EE. So it's something that we consider quite natural, but also there's a lot of work that we're putting in as Payara to make businesses aware that the move to Jakarta EE namespace is the next natural and most important thing to do if they want to modernize and if they want to keep their environment safe and stable. For many users and companies that use Java EE, those applications running on Java EE are core to the business. So those migrations have to be planned really carefully. They would quite often actually be part of this larger modernization project, like moving to containers or cloud. So again, it takes time. And again, this educational aspect, which all of us with Eclipse Foundation and Payara are working on to educate the teams to understand the meaning and the importance of the move from Java to Jakarta EE namespace. So what we're seeing here really is transition period with Jakarta EE leading this new development while Java EE continues to support existing actively maintained systems. Do you want me to move to the next slide, Chiara?
Yes, please. So one solution that we saw our responders are using to address this complexity and all these challenges that they currently face with Java ecosystems is platform engineering. Because of course it offers developers a platform to kind of support the development, deployment, and management of their applications more efficiently, focus on automation and self-service. It focuses on streamlined workflows that ultimately can help productivity, reliability, but also give a bit of peace of mind. So, for example, a good representation, I feel, of how platform engineering is supporting developers is if we move to the next slide. Over time, I think when the first enterprise Java applications started, of course, you had a lot of coding and less maybe infrastructure to worry about. And then now the infrastructure part is growing considerably. But with platform engineering, what you see is that this infrastructure constraint is being taken care by the platform aspects, by the IDPs, whereas then the development team can focus again on feature development and innovation of their applications. And if we look at some stats, at some data from the survey, we found that for most organizations, platform engineering is either critical or anyway important. For a very limited number of respondents, it was either not a priority or they weren't exactly sure. And in many applications, in many teams, IDPs are being developed, used, or they are making the case to support IDP implementation to support the overall organization. Now, IDPs and platform engineering are extremely important. We saw that. But the way your platform and your IDP are can have a massive effect on how much they can help your entire organization. So, of course, you're going to have like bad platforms, average platform, good platforms, and exceptional platforms. And there are a few elements that I think can help make the case or help define what would be the ideal platform. So, for example, a real mindset focus on the use cases, a very solid backend, really focusing on what the users need, what they know also in terms of skills, what's available to them. Really building platforms that deliver values. If you can make sure that you use those or that you're building those, then you're gonna be sure to be seeing real benefits across your organization and Java development and management. Now, here we also look at a few different kind of key projects that are becoming increasingly popular based on the responses we got from our survey. So because, of course, we saw that modernization, adopting the cloud or new infrastructures, or adopting Kubernetes are becoming increasingly important. And we look at three different kind of ways that platform engineering approaches can help. So, for example, if we look at rehosting applications in the cloud, of course, there are a number of challenges. And if we move to the next slide, yeah, perfect. Thanks, Dominika. So, of course, rehosting applications in the cloud from on-premise, it brings a lot of challenges. Of course, it brings also a lot of opportunities. But, of course, there are a lot of different aspects to bear in mind. And yes, it sounds like a simple lift and shift, unless you start actually doing the lift and shift, and then you worry about security, data protection, different dependency, wait times, etc. Now, what we saw is that typically lift and shift or cloud migrations, they can take months with traditional solutions, because of course you've got a number of different elements to consider. Now, with highly effective platform engineering solutions, that time from months can move actually to minutes. And if you move to the next slide, you can see sort of where kind of different elements of the traditional lift and shift can be taken care by the platform themselves. Now, it's not only a matter of time, but it's also a matter of costs. Our estimates is that with platform engineering, you can save over 190K in developer costs. Because, of course, times are shorter, but also then developers can really focus on other activities. Now, the second kind of project we look at is how to modernize applications in hyperscale cloud. So very similar, but kind of larger scale, larger project problems in a way. And also here, platform engineering, just like it did for smaller scale projects, it can still save considerable amount of time. So moving to hyperscale, it can take days or weeks, depending on traditional kind of workflows. With platform engineering, you can cut that in minutes and saving at least 20K on average. Plus, of course, monthly cloud costs can be saved, because exactly the platform can optimize your setup, make sure you're not overspending. And then finally, the third project we look at is refactoring. So, of course, especially when you're modernizing, you tend to have one monolith. And most of the time, what you want to do with this monolith is divided into different containers and microservices. So you have to fully re-architect your application, and containerization can take a very long time. Now, here in our estimate, we put weeks for a relatively small application, but the larger the monolith, the more complex, the more embedded within your entire ecosystem your monolith is, the longer it's going to take. With a platform, that can be done in a much shorter amount of time, saving a lot of headaches. And in terms of cost saving, we estimated about 70K. Plus, just like before, of course, monthly containerization and cloud costs that can be achieved. And finally, container orchestration and Kubernetes. You've modernized your application. Now you have got to deal with all these Kubernetes. It can take days, even within a normal release cycle. Of course, even when the code is very similar, still kind of adjusting, working, for example, with YAML and Helm file can take quite a while. With a suitable platform, you can really cut that down in minutes or seconds with considerable savings. Again, I think development costs we estimated around 82K. So massive benefits can come from using a suitable platform that is designed around platform engineering principles. So now to conclude, of course, we saw that Java is still here. I know every year someone says Java is dead. Java is definitely not dead. Everyone is still using it for a lot of different projects, new projects as well as very old ones that, with older applications that are still critical. They are still important. In some cases, maybe they will be retired, but not necessarily. In some cases, modernization of these applications is the way forward. And of course, with so many technologies being developed around Java, as well as aside Java, companies definitely want to explore those and how they can benefit their applications. But of course, you're just adding on. And it doesn't make sense to add these technologies unless you think that there are clear benefits, like, for example, the cloud. Now, of course, if you want to then incorporate them, it's going to make your workload more kind of packed, because of course if you've got both applications on premise and on the cloud and multi-cloud, hybrid, whatever, it's going to add to the complexity. But this complexity can really be reduced by platform application, and this is what the teams that are succeeding with today's challenges, they're really finding good value in platform engineering solutions. So now that is all from our side. Of course, here today we only highlighted the key data that we think would be relevant for you. But if you want to have a read at the full report, it's now fully available. You just scan the QR code. You're gonna be redirected to the resource, and then enjoy the read. And if you have any questions, please, now it's your time.
And I've just added you can see the direct link to the report as well below, hopefully below your screen. And I'm going to add it to the chat as well. So you can see, as Chiara said, all the findings and more. So we haven't really gone through everything. You can see it in the report. I'm just checking. We haven't had any questions in the last 30 minutes. So if you have any questions beyond this webinar, like we said at the beginning, please reach out to us. We are on most of the social media platforms. Myself and Chiara are on LinkedIn as well. You can also always email us at info@payara.fish. Just whichever way you prefer, you can reach out to us. And we've got lots more resources available on our blog as well. So have a look. We usually do expand on any findings like this, or any releases, any news in the Java Jakarta world. You should be able to see us covering that as well, and a lot of educational content on Jakarta, on Java, on modernization as well. So definitely have a look at the blog and a resources page on payara.fish.
And also, I realized today we unpacked so many data in a very short time. So if you want to watch the webinar on demand, it's going to be available. So yeah, don't worry. You can still check everything we said today.
Yes, it's because it's quite a lot of information. All right, so I think we're ready to wrap up. Thank you very much again. Thank you very much, Chiara, for covering all those important points. And yeah, have a look at our events page if you want to join us for another event. We have quite a few lined up, pretty much a couple of times a month. So have a look, and hopefully we'll see you there soon.
Thank you, Dominika.
Yeah, thank you.